Welcome back to The Serial Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Anna Wood. On today's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Mark Cox, the co-founder and CEO of Orli. We discuss the inspiration behind founding Orli after witnessing patient crisis as an NHS doctor, giving children the tools they need to regulate their emotions in a fun way, and winning the Social Impact Hero Award at the Hustle Awards 2025. Let's dig in. Welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me. Nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So we begin every podcast with our signature icebreaker question, which is, what's your favorite breakfast cereal and why?
So I don't know if this is really rogue, but I've always been someone who mixes their cereal. So I don't really have a favorite. I would go for a combination of raisin wheats, a little bit rogue as well. And I like Golden Nuggets, and I also like Crave. But I've been on a kind of mission the whole of my life to convert people that eating a mixture of cereal is okay. So that's usually what I go for.
I've never heard of anyone mixing their cereal, but honestly, it's kind of genius. So would you be able to introduce yourself and tell me a bit about your background?
Sure. I'm Mark. I'm a doctor by trade. So I've worked in the NHS for about 7 or 8 years or so across a number of different jobs, and qualified in Newcastle in sort of 2018, and spent the last sort of 4 years in London. Worked in Manchester, where I'm from originally, and have always been very interested in mental health, and that's what sort of led me on the journey of Orli. I've always been someone who's fairly entrepreneurial. I used to do things like run, nights at nightclubs when I was at uni. I used to do all of the kind of classic entrepreneurial stuff. I set up like a Facebook group to sell tickets when I was at university, and didn't really find the specialty within medicine that I thought was going to be, what I wanted to do forever. Just that specialty. I wasn't kind of obsessed with one particular thing. And over the last 3 or 4 years, I've been branching out across social media, across podcasting myself, and then also now, most of my time is spent building Orli.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what is Orli and what is your mission?
Great question. So Orli is a digital physical platform that is designed to make looking after your mental health fun and engaging, accessible for children, but also make it easier and simpler for the adults in that child's life to support the child. So our mission really is to create technology and products that help children improve their ability to emotionally regulate, later in life, therefore helping them become sort of confident, compassionate leaders. And so, we're building what we call an ecosystem. It's very buzzwordy, isn't it? But it's an ecosystem because it's something for the children, which is a digital product called the Orliverse. It's also something for the parents, which is Orli Family, which is more of a co-pilot. And then actually the product we've developed the most is Orli Schools, or Orli Professionals, which is more for teachers, practitioners, and professionals. And that's something that we're launching at the moment across different schools. So the concept of Orli is based around characters, so a bit like the film Inside Out. Children, and if anyone's watching the recording, you can see one of my characters here. This is Orla. The children meet these characters. They get to create their own Orli, but then they meet these characters who will help them engage and teach them through storytelling, through games, through physical activities in the real world. And then we use the data that they give us to turn that into insights or suggestions or activities for their parents or their schools to do. So, there is a digital physical component to Orli. It's based around these characters. They're our kind of core. They were our core insight back at the start of this year when we went and worked with children, and we found that the characters were what created emotional safety, what created this kind of catalyst for change and for connection and for learning. And so, we start with software, and then we're branching out into physical products, and later we'll be looking at how we can make smarter products that have an element of digital and physical technology within them.
Great. So wanted to ask, as you're already a doctor and you've now decided to kind of found a company, what was the inspiration behind founding it, especially as you already have such a, I guess, high pressure job, and also people do see founding a company as also quite an intense experience?
Yeah, you can say that again. So I've seen a lot of crisis in my life, particularly from a professional perspective when it comes to mental health. So there's a number of occasions I've cared for people in crisis with their mental health who were suicidal or who had self-harmed. And when I have cared for young adults or young people in a similar position, it's always been something that stayed with me from a kind of an emotional perspective, more so than anything else physical. Sorry to the people that I see that have kind of broken their leg, but it's always something that kind of affects me more deeply from on an emotional standpoint. And I was diagnosed with ADHD 6 months ago, but before that, I didn't know I had ADHD. And I struggled myself with anxiety and burnout for the first time years ago. So the combination of those two things, of having this experience of not really knowing myself properly and experiencing quite severe mental health symptoms or challenges, as well as then seeing the human side of crisis in a professional capacity, it was my inspiration. The kind of insight I think I bring as a doctor that, separates that human side is seeing how the system is not necessarily set up to support people earlier in the journey, and particularly our young people who, for me, there is no greater social cause than the way in which our young people's minds functioning and how they feel, because we just know so much of our behavior as humans is driven by emotion. And it's really important that children have the skills and the relationships and the environment to think in a way or feel in a way that allows them to think more clearly or allows them to make decisions that they would want to make. So I think for me, it's such an important kind of mission that I've seen firsthand in different capacity, both from a personal perspective and professional, and really having the insights into the system's failings have given me the kind of, stepping stones to go down this journey of creating Orli.
Yeah, great. So you said that kind of you've seen how the system can kind of fail people. So how do you think your approach differs from other support models that may be out there currently?
What I like to think about when it comes to Orli support is that we are blending something that is very playful, fun, and accessible, something that is inspirational. And so I guess what companies do very well in the kind of more B2C space, I'm thinking of kind of Headspace and Calm and, Duolingo, companies that are kind of household brands. They are able to capture people's attentions and be very accessible and be something that people aspire to. So there's one part of Orli that we want to create, which is that it's something for everyone. It's playful and it's fun, but we want to combine that with clinical rigor and evidence and a clinically backed approach. And so we sit between this, and the way in which we do that is through gathering evidence, building a clinically backed framework, making sure that things are designed by clinicians. And so we sit between this kind of, something that is fun and accessible and playful and can be for everyone and capture people's attention and imagination, but also have the kind of evidence base behind it that other things don't. So that would be kind of number one in terms of our approach. We aim to be something that is more based around early intervention, so support for anyone in their journey, but particularly earlier on, helping people kind of, helping either prevent mental health issues or kind of intervene earlier in that journey so they don't end up. We aren't a clinical service, so we don't necessarily offer assessments or therapeutic interventions with clinicians, although at some point maybe that might be integrated into how we refer people on or into something we potentially do. And then also I would say that we are very, like I said, focused on building an ecosystem, so something for all of the different parts of that child support system, so parents, school, healthcare, as grandparents, all of this, that we see Orli as a tool that has the ability to support each of the different people in that child's life, not just something that is designed to be, here's 6 therapy sessions for you as a child, without going and addressing any of the other sort of systemic or environmental factors in that child's life, we see Orli as something that can hopefully improve or support those different areas.
Mm-hmm. Great. So you discussed the ecosystem and how it's kind of like for home, parents, and school. And I know you recently did your first pilot at a school. How did that go?
Yeah, it was great. We've run a workshop called Create Your Orli for nearly 9 months or so now. That was where we first designed the Orli characters. We'd done it digitally. We designed these characters. We went into a school. We ran the workshop, and we realized just how powerful the characters can be, and the impact that they had for weeks afterwards. We then went about redesigning our platform and our approach and everything really. And that was just in February. So this pilot was to go and redeliver that workshop, but with a digital side to it. So children still create their physical Orli literally with balloons, and you put rice in it. We do a demonstration, they customize it, and it's always the favorite part of what children do. It's creative play. It's creating something sensory that they can keep and they have ownership over. They absolutely love it. But we also then got them on the platform, and we got some advice. And our pilots at the moment are not necessarily focused on huge impact measures because it's still early in our journey and early with product development. They're more focused on co-creation. And so we have the platform where children can draw, they can suggest activities. We spent the whole time just getting more ideas of what children would like to do in the games, how they would like us to interact with them via Orli, how much of it they want to be physical, how much they want to be digital, how would it fit into the school day, what would they want their characters to do in the future, what games would they want to see, what environments would they want to have in the digital or physical world that we're creating. So it went really, really well. We are now hopefully pushing schools that we're working with to continue using the platform and continue using the sessions that we create. But it's early days, and we'll see what the kind of feedback is in the next kind of 2 to 3 months to the first few schools that are on the platform.
Yeah, cool. So you said how kind of co-creation is really important, and it definitely must be important when you're working, especially for a platform that's aimed at children, as there's adults can have a certain view, but a child's perspective and the person who's going to be using it must be completely different as well.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a balance to be struck with that. Because I mean, I have an 11-year-old who's our chairman of our young person's board, and if I was to listen to all of his ideas, we'd be creating something that might not be, completely aligned with improving mental health, but it'd be very cool for him. So you have to kind of, take as many ideas on as possible, shape the solution so it meets the needs of children. But you can't just focus on creating death lasers if you're building a mental health game. But yeah, it's one of those things. Our favorite part of what we do is going into schools and running the workshops. As much as we want to build cool technology, it's still never going to be beaten as an experience.
Yeah, definitely. So what is the target age for Orli?
We kind of sit between sort of 6 to 12 at the moment. As we expand out and we are able to develop further, we'll be a little bit more specific around age groups and how the experience differs for different age groups. At this point, it's more still testing which age groups respond best. But we've had children as young as 4 using our physical Orlis at home. And we've had children as old as sort of 15 getting involved with some of the digital stuff and some of the physical stuff as well. It kind of depends. But where our pilots are at the moment is kind of like 9 to 11. And then our physical product stuff we've been doing over the summer with parents, a lot of the children have been as young as kind of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's kind of the sweet spot, is probably 6 to 12.
Yeah, great. So I think there's an increasing conversation around concern about technology and children's well-being. Where do you think Orli fits into this conversation?
Yeah, great question. Firstly, I think my view on this is that technology is a huge part of our daily lives, and the difficulty that parents face is that we want to empower children to use technology, but without any of the harm. And there's a really difficult battle you have to run there. I think we're all as humans experiencing, I don't know if how you feel this, but everyone I speak to at the moment, we all feel more and more addicted to technology. I very rarely meet someone who's like, oh, I've cracked it and I feel less. It's like, it's really difficult and insidious change that has happened over the last few years, particularly in my life, where I feel like I spend my whole life on a screen. So there is a huge problem, and there's no doubt that there are links to mental health, but it is complicated, and we need to see it as such. I don't think there's just a one blanket answer. And I don't think banning everything is massively helpful. Although, there are things that we can put in place at home to make our lives easier and to reduce screen time to a healthy amount. So where I think Orly fits into this is that the Orly characters and the experience for children is all about helping children build agency and helping children to build confidence. And so Orly's become friends for children. They become something they interact with. And the way I see us expanding into the screen time and the technology sort of debate, or let's call it digital health or digital overwhelm, is that the Orly characters will teach children about screen time. Some of the Orly characters are more focused on emotions. Some of the characters may well be focused more on an area of personality, and some of them may well be focused more on screen time, as well as the fact that your own Orly will power up and down depending on how much screen time you've had and how many kind of physical activities you've done. And there'll be an element to which the parent can decide that. And because these children that we are, supporting are quite young. So we want to make sure that parents have more tools to manage things like screen time, to manage things like big feelings, to manage things like arguments and conflict in the house. So it's about trying to empower parents without becoming part of the kind of, helicopter parent problem as well. So it's really important we don't make things feel too controlling or give kind of too much of a authoritarian response to parents. So it's an interesting one that obviously we're really interested in supporting and making sure we don't become part of the problem. And I think that's probably another reason why we are really focused on the physical side to Orly. So whether or not it's the physical products that we introduce, whether or not it's the activities that Orly suggests that are in the real world to get children moving, get them off the screen. But also, I try not to vilify technology because it's, we're sat here on laptops talking through technology. Children will live in a world that is going to be so connected and going to be so technologically focused that it's important that we make sure children have the skills. It's just got to be done in a sensible way.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting and important that you said that kind of like the screen time is also built in and the kids are being taught about it, because I think that's the issue. Is we also mentioned how everyone is becoming very addicted to technology, and it's kind of hard to not be in this day and age because most people's works are on the screen and then your phone's always on you. So it's always something to fill the time. And I think that's that line there with kids, is that parents don't want their kids to be addicted to technology, but the kids also need to use the tech to become tech literate as they grow, because childhood now looks completely different to childhood even 10 years ago. So I think that's a really interesting point that you've made.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's a fine line. There's a fine line, and it's often about quality. Quantity has an impact for sure, but it's about quality. What are our children using on the screens, and how does technology actually create more moments of connection between family members? So, for example, the Orliverse is going to be an app that parents and children can use together, and then so there's parts of the experience that are actually creating connection. The Orly characters suggesting activities that you do back. You're doing something physical. So you're not just sitting there mind-numbingly staring at a screen. It's about how do we use tech in a kind of intentional way rather than just completely vilifying it. I think that is absolutely got to be the way that we go. And, I think over the next 10, 20 years, 10, 15 years, we'll see a lot of change when it comes to tech. And I think we'll see less screens to a certain extent. And we'll have clever ways of using tech, and we want to be at the forefront of that. And we want to follow in the footsteps of brands like Yotto and Edurino and Tony's, who are child entertainment or child um, focused brands or family focused brands that use technology in a clever way that doesn't revolve around just purely using screens. And we want to do something quite similar at Orly.
Yeah, great. So I was going to kind of move the conversation on a little bit so you won the Social Impact Hero Award at the Hustle Awards this year. So congratulations on that.
Very much.
So what does that mean for you and Orly?
It's huge, really, because early stage businesses, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in a minute, but it's hard work, right? It's a lot of hours without much coming back. You have to put in a lot of time, and you spend a lot of time doing things that maybe don't work out. You're learning, you are trying to build a team, you're trying to figure things out. And so I think, just as context, there are a lot of times where you feel a little bit like there's elements of self-doubt, there's loneliness, and it's a very confronting experience for anyone, but particularly for a sensitive soul like me. So it's one of those things where when you win an accolade or an award, it feels great. It's great to have some recognition for what you're doing, that other people have sat and looked through what you do and where you're going and how you've helped people. And then, so to recognize to be doing something in the social impact space, particularly when you compare us to some of the other companies that were in that space who are doing amazing work, it really is special to see that. It's, it's always onwards to the next thing with a startup. So it's nice to get a chance to sit and talk about it. And so, yeah, I know I wasn't able to go to the Hustle Awards this year. Sadly, I was away, but two of my team members, Ewan and Stefano, went and they had a great time, and they felt very smug winning that award, which was nice. So hopefully the first of many. We have won a couple now, which is great. But I think you guys were the first one to give us an award, so we're very grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And yeah, congratulations. We hear from a lot of startups, but as you said, with a startup, it's one thing after the other, and you don't really have the chance to kind of sit and reflect. And once you win an award, it's like, oh yeah, we're actually doing good work.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, it feels great.
Yeah. So I think you already knew my next question from the way you answered that one, because it's going to be, what are the biggest challenges that have come up on the journey so far, and how have you managed to overcome them?
There's a kind of, like, I guess I'll give two parts to this answer. There is and this is different depending on what you do within the team, but for me, my greatest challenge has been fundraising. And second part of this answer is the kind of mental battle that you have, and fundraising is probably a big contributor, a big part of that. So fundraising is really tough, and I think for a company that are trying to do something that is very socially impact driven, but we are a private company and we have big visions for big vision for the future, and we have commercial plans. It's always been the thing that is challenging. It's not like a big juicy AI agent fintech that is all the rage at the moment, and you'll see massive growth. We are first time founders raising money for a company that is social impact, that has lots of potential, but at the same time doesn't have huge amount of, I guess, commercial traction. So the fundraising journey has been really difficult, particularly as we don't have big network of angel investors. We haven't been doing this for a long period of time. So that for me has been the biggest challenge so far. And we are, in the middle of a fundraise at the moment with some good offers on the table, which makes life a little bit nicer and a little bit easier. But that's always been our challenge. And I think it's the lifeblood of a company is how much money you've got. And until you've got a business that you can create scalable revenue, then you're always going to be maybe chasing your tail a little bit until you get to that kind of point. And then the second part, and I think that's directly related, and I've definitely been struggling a little bit recently in certain areas, is the kind of mental battle that comes with. So for me, it's the fact that I have lots of different ideas and loads of different opportunities, and I create opportunities for the business, but it's then the difficulty that comes with not having money in the business or not having commercial traction and knowing which opportunities to take, and then the kind of mental battle you have there. So overall, yes, like running a business is hard, but there's this really weird thing that you have as a founder, which is like, what direction do I go in? There are so many great things that are happening. I've got huge opportunities at the moment in different areas, but ultimately we can't go anywhere, and I can't pay the people I need to pay, and I can't pay myself unless we get funding in the business. But me as a founder, it's not my favorite thing to do. So it's like, which direction do you go in? Oh, well, I need to go in these directions, so I get fundraising, and then it's that kind of it's that trade off that is really, really difficult. So those I would say are the two biggest challenges that I've faced so far.
Yeah, I hear a lot about funding. I think currently as well, recently when I've been talking to people, when I've asked about challenges, everyone said funding, kind of no matter what background they have. I think especially for first-time founders, it's probably the biggest stress for them because you need funding to keep going. And then they're like, oh, but then I've got to do all this other stuff. And I do think it's just a big challenge in general.
100%. Yeah. It's that also like sunk cost of fundraising is, I'm the one who spends most of the time in the business, but if I'm focused on fundraising, then I'm not focused on building a business. So it's really difficult. And yes, it's needed, but it's not necessarily product development. It's not necessarily, creating partnerships or speaking to schools or speaking to parents, doing customer research and all the other things that you could be doing. It's trying to get money off people to buy into your vision, which is a necessary part of the journey for a lot of businesses. Is not always how I would, I guess, choose to spend my time.
Yeah, it's not, I guess, the fun part of having your own business.
No, it's not.
So on the flip side of that question, what would you say have been some of the biggest highlights on the journey so far?
Yeah, great question. I think that getting some funding. So we got some funding in two occasions where we've had people give us funding. So one was a grant in October last year, and one was over funding from a VC and an accelerator in April. And then recently we've had another much bigger offer, which we're just going through the kind of due diligence with. Those moments feel quite big. And then we also recently had our first sale with a school. So again, another kind of revenue generation. So you see, it's all related to money, right? But at the same time, those would be like the kind of business headlines, the business highlights. And then from a kind of more personal perspective, the highlights are always going into schools and running the workshops and working and hearing feedback from parents around things that have helped, and kids when they, if you go to our website, you can see a few little videos of some of the children we've sent Orlis to and see the kind of impact that they're having, and hear from parents. Just a very quick story. A parent said the other day they walked into the room where their youngest, who has been helping us and had been engaging with us for a couple of months now, was sat with our first version of the platform on an iPad, just breathing in and out, doing breath work. And Caroline, the mum, I'm sure she won't mind me saying, who she is, said to me she's been trying to get her youngest to do breath work for about 5 years, and she's never done it before. So little things like that, people might hear me and say the characters magic and stuff, but they do create this crazy connection. We've seen it work time and time again in different things that aren't about emotional intelligence or emotional regulation. And really what Orli's all about is trying to harness some of that natural human connection we have to these characters, and then turn it into something really positive and productive and helpful for people's emotions and mental health. So yeah, those are some of the highlights.
Yeah, amazing. So you are a first-time founder. What lessons have you learned since founding the company?
So number one, I would say, is that nothing is ever as good or bad as you think. At the start, it was like, just feeling like some sort of emotional yo-yo, and most things that happen are bad as well. So you end up spending a lot of your time like in the pits. And then when something good happens, you're like, we are going to change the world, and I'm going to, we're going to take over in the next 6 months, and, we're going to be millionaires. That kind of like, it's that kind of like irrational, disparity between good and bad. And over time, you do become numb to it, which I don't know if is like that good a thing either, but your body and your mind just kind of adapt to the fact that it's not ever that bad and things will be fine and you'll find a way around it. And also things aren't as good, which in some ways is good and bad. So I would say that is certainly kind of like a biggie for me from like looking after yourself perspective. The second one is surround yourself with good people. So particularly in the early days, unless you're already really well connected and have done this done this before and have things set out, I think one of the best things you can do as a founder for me has been reaching out to people or finding ways to interact with people and engage with people that have different skills to you, who will then either potentially become team members or advisors or just become, people that you know in your network, because startups are a high risk game and there's no saying, even if you do everything right, that the market will like your idea or be big enough for you to succeed. And so you are indirectly giving yourself massive value add by doing this, and not just through the learning that you get from other people, not just through the experience of the connection, but also the kind of network that you build. So I think that's something I've done quite well over the last few years of, putting people around me either that have become team members, become advisors, or just in my network, and building a little bit of I hate this word, but brand and that kind of stuff is super important, because like I say, it's higher risk. It helps your business while things are going on and whilst you're working. But if God forbid things don't work out, you have something to show for it at the end of the day from a kind of network perspective, which really is one of the probably the most valuable thing. I think sadly it still is quite a lot about who you know rather than what you know in this world. So it does definitely go a long way. Hopefully I don't get any hate for that, but I think that's my experience so far is it's very true. I'm not saying it's the way it should be, but it is very, very true that people open doors for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I've spoken to a lot of founders who say that networking and building a network for themselves is so important, whether it is kind of to find new opportunities, but also kind of people talk a lot about founder loneliness and how being a founder is so stressful, that being able to talk to other founders in a network who might be doing something completely different to you, but kind of having that and being able to talk to them about it is really important for them too.
Definitely. And I think also don't get me wrong, I'm not someone who goes to like networking events every month or every week. It's more, a lot of it has been through maybe accelerators or through LinkedIn or, other ways, and reaching out to people either in a random way or in a targeted way. There's a balance. I think you can get distracted as a founder with the things that are shiny or the things that you think you should be doing around that. But there's just an element of make sure you're not just in your own little silo, so focused on your idea that, you're still kind of like contributing to other areas of your life. Because when the going gets tough, you don't want to be sat there just on your own in your bedroom trying to code your way out of a problem. It's really important that you have those people around you, both from a mental health and at a future perspective, as well as solving the problems that you're probably facing.
Mm-hmm. Great. So my next question is kind of linked to my last one, which is, if you could go back and tell yourself something, like a piece of advice or a lesson that you should know before you started the company, what would that one thing be?
That's a good one. I'm torn. There's a few different things, and I know you wanted one.
Feel
I
free
think
to
that,
say all the things if you
yeah,
want.
I think there's a couple of things here, which is one which is more around kind of the product idea startup, which is basically, I'll give you a bit of context. I think we spent a long time doing what kind of the startup advice is, which is like, you go and speak to people, you ask them what the problems they have, and then you find a solution, like you build a solution to it, and then you try and test it, and you get some validation and things. And I think because the way humans work, it's very easy for people to say, oh, well, I need this. And then, oh yeah, that sounds great. This is what would help me and whatever. And then we spent a long time doing little experiments that probably we could have done a lot quicker, and probably probably were done based on things where we had kind of asked questions and people were being nice and saying they wanted certain things, and then we ran experiments. And I think ultimately you've got to try and get to revenue. People will make a decision from a startup perspective, from a buying something perspective. You'll find the advice that you get back if you try and sell something much more realistic than if you say, all right, okay, yeah, will you do this experiment when we launch it for free? So I think from a kind of where I'm going with this is that I think there is a lot of fairly outdated advice out there. And I think if you can, particularly with the new tools that exist, like AI tools, if you're building a digital product and whatnot, I think you can get to better validation and better feedback on what's going to work much more quickly than we definitely did. So try and sell more quickly, try and put something together. And if that means running a service-based business with a front end of digital, then absolutely do that. And I think if you do that, you'll get better feedback back, and you'll know how to change and course correct and if you're onto something much more quickly. I would say that is a kind of like quite a big one that, we if I started a business now, I would do something very, very different around how we approach that first, validation point. And then the other thing I wanted to maybe say here was, I think I would be a little bit more meticulous in how I would set out my team, basically. And so how I first approach that in terms of what do I want to do in this business and what do I need to bring to the table. So we certainly kind of fell into running a business together, Ewan and I, and then we have built a team in a way off the back of that have skills. But Ewan and I, neither of us are technical, and we're building tech. And so we've had to learn certain things. And so I've spoken to a few people recently who are starting businesses who wanted to just chat things through. And I would very much be spending a couple of weeks really thinking about what do I want to do? What do I bring to the table? What knowledge, and more importantly, what skills do I have? What can I learn, and what do I not want to learn? And then how do I outsource that in a team member? We often talk in our team about fantasy football, and sort of like, if in our fantasy football startup, like who would be in it, and what, fantasy football, who's that kind of new tech lead we want, or new engineer, or new marketing person. I think that there is something very important at the start of your journey to do that, to get that right, because Ewan and I have obviously found an amazing team, and we now have a really full set of skills, but that wasn't an easy process. So we spent a lot of time across the last 2 or 3 years, like making sure that was right. And actually we've had quite a lot of luck with that. Whereas if I was starting again, I would probably go and validate firstly on my own as much as possible. And then you're in a really strong position to bring on like either a co-founder or just, maybe advisors, fractional people, whatever you need, depending on what business you're trying to run.
Yeah, that's something else I hear from a lot of startups, that actually one of the big challenges is hiring and building out a team that is appropriate for the thing that you're building. I think
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people outside of a startup wouldn't assume that hiring was an issue. I think from the outside, funding, I can see why that would be hard. But I think when you're building a product, especially kind of something like Orli that is so important, it's so socially impact driven, you also want to bring on people who have the same vision and also want to do the same stuff as you.
Yeah, there's also a human side to that, which I think we are definitely better now than we were at the start. We also had kind of, different relationships that didn't work out in the same way that we would hope. That now the current team members, like, we have such a good vibe, and we have a lot of fun together, and everyone kind of understands that even at, when times get tough, as they have been recently, with funding and everything else, that everyone kind of is already on the same page, and you have to be very good with your communication and all of those things. But it's super, super important. So there's also probably something in that kind of, how do you make sure they are the right person, and what do you do initially? Don't go and offer X amount of your company to someone who you've only just met, which is certainly, something I've seen and heard of in the past. It's like, how do you get that first kind of relationship building done in a way that works for both of you, so you know what the right thing to do is next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, So my next question is, what does the future hold for Orli? Do you have any big plans in the pipeline that you can discuss at this moment?
There's kind of a couple of different things going on. Is we've got a product for schools, and parents can use that at home, but it's more focused around schools and children in sort of lesson time or start of the day. We're going to run workshops at as many schools as possible and learn from schools on how they would like to use this as a product. And our aim is to try and get as many as we can, but at least 20-25 schools in the next kind of calendar year. Off the back of that, we will launch our first kind of physical product. So an Orli character-based product where when they where a parent buys this product, they will unlock content within the app and activities within the app based around this character. Children hopefully will want to collect those characters. They will learn through the activities and the content that we create, and they'll also get a nice physical product. So those are the kind of two main business actions, but the kind of bigger long-term plans are to work with the right people to design our longer-term vision, which is a potentially wearable, a smart companion, which is something that helps children either feel calmer or feel more connected to their parent or others. They'll be based around the Orli characters. It might be worn around their neck. It might be worn on their wrist. It might just be something that they collect and they can customize themselves. Moving from just a screen-based solution to a digital physical solution to then a kind of smart screen-free solution is our kind of trajectory. And so all depending on the success of fundraising, revenue generation, and everything else that we're doing in the background. But that's kind of where we're at. There's obviously lots of other things that we may well be doing, such as try to work with the NHS, and we have just been accepted onto an accelerator that we can't talk about at the moment, but is a big one. So there's a few other things in the background and a big partnership with a charity as well. So loads of really interesting things. Few big important jobs for me to do as the CEO to make sure we can fund all of these activities. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at and what we hope to do over the next kind of 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. You have a lot coming up. And that also brings me to my final question, which is there anything else that you wanted to add or plug at the end of the podcast?
I think the main thing for us is if you work in education, you are a parent, please get in touch. And, if you want to learn more about how Orli can fit into the school day, how it can support your staff and your students and your parents, or you as a parent would like to learn more, then please go to the website orli.health and sign up and get in contact with me. I'm at mark@orli.health, or you can get me on LinkedIn, Dr Mark Cox. And yeah, always here for a chat and to hear about what's going on in your life and see how Orli can support. But yeah, big one is schools and parents at the moment for us. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. It's been great getting to chat with you and learning more about Orli and the impact that you're having. And once again, congratulations on winning the Social Impact Hero Award at the Hustle Awards.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.
If you liked this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out Startup Magazine's socials to stay up to date on the latest startups news.